for the ultimate source of inspiration, knowledge, and entertainment, look no further. Network Kingdom is a unique platform that brings together experts from various industries. Through networking and collaboration, we create inspiring conversations that educate, entertain, and motivate our listeners. Whether you're a business professional, an entrepreneur, or simply someone looking to grow their knowledge base.
Hello, people. I'm back here again, and I have with me Chris Duffey. And I'm really excited. Forgive me because I'm going to act like a real novice that I am in this field. Chris, it's so nice to have you. Chris has written 2 books on 2 topics that I am very particular about and I really want to learn, AI and Metaverse. So if I were you, I'm going to sit back and listen because he's going to be dishing out pure gold. Thank you so much, Chris, for being on.
Great to be here. Yeah, excited for the conversation. Before
we start, can you introduce yourself briefly?
Definitely. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Duffey. My day job is I'm a strategic strategist at Adobe. Previously, I was on the content creation side for about 25 years or so. And over the course of those years, I've seen time and time again how creativity and innovation amplified by technology truly has the power to change the world. And so much so, I felt almost a personal and professional obligation to write about 2 of the most transformative technologies that we've seen on a generational level. The first being artificial intelligence, and the second one being the so-called metaverse. So truly exciting times. We'll caveat, albeit somewhat abstract titles for these kind of movements or technologies, but looking forward to decoding the metaverse and talking about artificial intelligence with everyone.
Yeah, interesting times indeed. Now, you forgot to add that your book actually is the first. The Superhuman Innovation is actually the world's first book on using AI.
To talk about AI, yes. Well,
I have to get that book.
Well, thank you. Yeah, well, it was quite a journey about 5 years ago. Started building up a tapestry of what it's called in the industry language transformers, which are really now essentially powering the 186 or so parameters of, if you've heard, the Chat GPT, and now Google's recent announcement of the Bard. Essentially, it's called generative AI. We like to call it Gen Tech. And so there's essentially 4 different pillars within Gen Tech: generative text, generative images, generative video, and generative 3D. And so I focused in on the text component for the book, where I built this AI system. I called it Amy, which stood for AI plus me, and it literally had a conversation back and forth with an AI system about AI. And it was fascinating for me when I first started out. You know, as a content creator, I'm familiar with looking down at that blank page and feeling that discomfort of, where is creativity going to take me? But nothing prepared me for the start of writing a book. And I started, I tried a number of different techniques, whiteboarding, Post-it notes, chart trees, and nothing really stuck in my mind or helped me. And that's where I said, let's not just talk about AI, let's actually leverage it. And so that's where I went down the rabbit hole of technology to create an assistant. And in many ways, I couldn't have written that first book without that assistant. It was, invaluable at many different times. One of my favorite moments was after each chapter, I would feed it into one component of the system for feedback. And it would often say, too humorous, not enough facts, too lighthearted, too serious. And that was my aha moment for what we're seeing today, this excitement around Chat GPT and the other language transformers. Is it truly has the power not to replace human creativity, thoughtfulness, mindfulness, but it has the power to amplify us. And so quite excited about the future going forward. And we'll chat, I'm sure, about some of the considerations, but fundamentally, just wanted to share with you and your audience that AI technology is not here to replace us, it's here to amplify us.
That is really soothing to hear, because a few days ago, I woke up in a panic. Like, this is going to take jobs off people. That was what I thought. Speaking about chats, I didn't even realize that had anything to do with AI. So when I started as a contributor in Brains magazine, they actually suggested we used Grammarly, and I used it, or I still do. At the time, I used it just for like a spell check. And then I soon found out it would tell you, oh, interesting, your article sounds interesting, sounds convincing, sounds funny, sounds this. And I was quite thrilled. Only recently did I realize that that was also some sort of AI. I never knew. And I found that really helpful. And sometimes when I'm writing sentences and it's not quite making sense, I'm like, okay, don't worry, Grammarly will sort it out at the end of the day. And it always does. Going forward, when I discovered all the other AI platforms that could actually write like a whole blog, I got worried, and I'm happy you mentioned it. So how is the AI going to affect jobs generally, and then specifically in the creativity industry? Don't you think that people would be losing their jobs?
I think it's a great point, and I think it's incumbent on us to ask ourselves this and society these types of questions. When I started writing the first book, honestly, I was a little disheartened at times when I would see these dystopian movies about artificial intelligence, and I always thought to myself, why are they so focused on the negative dystopian future? But I came to the realization these are quite powerful narratives as a cautionary tale to prevent those scenarios from happening. So just wanted to underscore, I think it's very important. There's a saying in the industry, with great power comes great responsibility, and part of that responsibility is to think about the ethical consequences of these types of technologies. So from a very high level, there's essentially 3 types of artificial intelligence. The first one, top level, is called superhuman intelligence, where
what did you call it?
Superhuman intelligence.
Okay.
And the titles play off that. That is this notion where the intelligence system is so profoundly intelligent, we as humans can't even comprehend it. As of right now, there is no superhuman intelligence systems out there. It's greatly divided within the AI community if that can ever be achieved. Personally, I'm in the camp it can't, because what often isn't taken into consideration is the mind-body connection. One common phrase is, I just have a gut feeling. That is the mind-body connection, right?
Yeah.
And so you can never embed that, in my mind, into a superhuman intelligence. The next layer down is called general intelligence, and that's this notion of it has equal capabilities to human intelligence. Again, there's no system out there that has achieved that level. Again, personally, I feel like that it is not taking into consideration the emotional component of the human condition. The current state of where artificial intelligence is called narrow intelligence. The name doesn't do it justice, but it's very task narrow, like narrow.
Narrow. Okay.
Yeah, narrow.
The straight and narrow path.
Yes. And so that is this idea that AI is pointed to a task and it achieves that task. So in the case of language transformers, it's been given the task to replicate generative text for that example. And so it gets very good at those types of tasks. So when you zoom back out, if the general consensus is it's about narrow AI, the human ability of creative thinking, critical thinking, is now the ability to be the composer or the orchestrator of these technologies to achieve a certain task. And so that, in my mind, will never be replaced. And so AI is just another tool to get us to starting points quicker, to inspire us, to give us different perspectives on things, to take away the grunt work, and so on. And so, we were chatting earlier that there were some studies recently, a couple years old now, but by 2030, there was the sense that 88% of the jobs in 2030 don't exist yet. And so I think that's an indication of we are going to be up-leveled by technology to do higher level critical thinking, problem solving, and discover and invent new things. Ultimately, my hope is for the betterment of society, individuals, and business. And so I think that's kind of an encapsulation of where we are currently with AI, how it can be leveraged, and its future focus going forward.
Wow. Okay, so you said that 80% of jobs that would exist in 2030, by 2030, don't exist yet.
Yes.
Now we're in 2023, so we're talking of 7 years.
Yes, it's fast approaching.
So by the grace of God, you and I would still be alive and active, right?
Yes.
So how does one stay relevant? And now, especially with the young people, because I'm so scared that it's, well, maybe scared is not the right word,
Yeah.
worried or concerned that people would be out of jobs, because it does literally everything.
I wouldn't say every, I think it's interesting to look at history, right? When we think about the future, and we've seen, similar patterns emerge over the last number of years. Every 15 years or so, there's a great advancement in technology. First, we had the desktop publishing revolution. We had a similar conversation. Then was the mobile revolution, then the social revolution, then the cloud revolution, and now we're at the AI and metaverse revolution. And if you look across all of those revolutions or introductions of the new technologies, the capabilities of humanity have been expanded and amplified. So with desktop publishing, when I first got into the industry, it was literally a game changer in the ability to create at the speed of thought. Before, you had to typeset, you had to take pictures, scan it, and this was a game changer. You
had to
fax, right? And so it gave us the ability to create like never before and express ourselves at scale. With mobile, we literally had, the supercomputer in our hands. The first iPhone was more powerful than the compute power that sent the first astronaut.
And it was big. It was
this
big.
Yeah, it was amazing. And so we were given this, ability to connect with our family, our friends, our company like never before, and access to information. So quite exciting. Social allowed us to share, moments in time with our families and friends. And now with cloud, it allowed us to enable this infrastructure to do these mass things at scale. And so quite excited about artificial intelligence. Yes, there should be conversations on the unintended consequences, but fundamentally, I think we've seen the patterns before where technology is going to drive humanity forward. And so much so, I think the metaverse is now fusing the digital and the physical world together for this new reality going forward.
And what would you say are the unintended consequences?
I think there's been an
what would you say are the unintended consequences?
There's been a few universal unintended consequences throughout Web 2, meaning the social era. Some of those are the algorithms created unintended echo chambers in many ways, where it just fed people more information that they were clicking on. And so I think there were some unintended consequences of it just kept on feeding and amplifying.
Too much information.
Yeah, too much information. A second one is, does it sow discord in many ways? Humanity, unfortunately, sometimes gravitates towards, clickable things that are more negative and provocative. And so how can we, in the future, create safeguards that can balance a more balanced narrative? And so, there's also, how do we build trust between people who are not physically together?
Yeah.
Those are some of the big ones in terms of the unintended consequences. And I think I'm quite excited about the metaverse, where I think 90% of those challenges can be addressed by user authentication, meaning, are you a human? Are you who you say you are? Much like in society, in the physical world, when there are some safeguards, there are some social norms that put guardrails on people's activities. When the person knows who you are, they know your family, and so you have these built-in safeguards to potentially slow down some reactionary comments, if you will. And so I think user authentication is starting to become a very hot topic, important topic going forward.
Yes, I'm actually even seeing that more. Now, before I get on the metaverse, because that's another challenging thing for me, what would you say to young people or people generally, how best to prepare themselves for the world that the AI is creating? How to stay relevant
I'm sorry, it froze.
Yeah, I'm saying, what would be your advice? What would you say to not just young people, but people generally who want to remain employable or active or relevant, most importantly relevant? What steps or what would you suggest they do to continue being relevant in their various fields with the advent of AI?
It's a great question. To be honest, nobody can predict the future, but it's my fundamental belief and personal mission that creativity can, literally change the world. And that started from a very early age. I grew up in a multicultural home. My father was Irish, my mother was Mexican, and that's where I learned firsthand the power of diversity and divergent thinking, of bringing foreseeable things together. And so that has stood with me throughout my entire career to connect the dots in unexpected ways. The power of art and science, now with creativity and technology, is one example of that, where when you leverage those two things together, you can literally do so many things. So I guess my mission to share with everyone is lean into your creativity, your inventiveness, your power of expression, and that is really going to help propel society forward in these kind of dynamic times.
Wow, my brain is working, and you're certainly going to come back here, because this episode is not enough to do justice to this topic. So now with the metaverse, I was saying to you before we started recording that I'd heard metaverse, and it just seemed so technical to me. And you know how you hear of something and you think you can do without not knowing about it, and it just keeps springing up in different things that you do. And I'm a lifelong learner and I kind of always want to know what's going on. So I know invariably it's something I'm going to have to learn and understand. What exactly is the metaverse?
Yes, it's a great question. Maybe to start off with, I think this is a wonderful example, or not a wonderful example, of how the name doesn't do justice to the output, both for artificial intelligence and the metaverse. Artificial intelligence, obviously nobody really likes anything artificial, so that wasn't a good branding exercise. And then the metaverse, for all intents and purposes, that we've never used the word or the term metaverse before 5 or so years
and
ago.
Metaverse sounds like outer space.
Yes. And so very simply, and I try not to define it, I try to describe it. And so the metaverse, very simply put, is the fusion of the digital and the physical world together. And so currently, many envision that or portray that as a VR experience. Yes, that might be one experience, but it might be an augmented reality experience. It might be a mixed reality experience. Currently, the visualization of the metaverse looks very game-like, kind of Roblox-like, avatar-y, but that's not to say it's going to evolve beyond that. But I would just encourage everyone to think about it's the next iteration of the internet that's more immersive in every way, from your experiences to your engagement to the content and so on. So quite excited about the metaverse. One thing I talk about in the book, and not to get too technical too fast, but I think it's really important, is even over the last 24 months, many people have conflated Web3 with the metaverse, and they are related, but they are distinctly different. And so just to go back, Web 1 was early.
I was just going to say that. You're assuming we know what Web 1 and Web 2 is, and you're hitting us with Web 3.
Yeah. So Web 1, kind of late 90s, early 2000s, was a read-only environment, right? We would plug in, plug in through the modem, and we would read, right? We'd kind of pull it in. The next wave kind of came mid 2000s, and that was the Web 2, the read and write era. And that gave us the ability to not only ingest the content, but to contribute to the content. And so that took us to the next phase over the last 7 or so years, which we now call Web 3. One caveat with Web 3 is Web 3 is different than Web 3.0. And so this is where we kind of paint ourselves in the corner sometimes with technology. Web 3.0 was an early definition of semantic sharing of content. Web 3 is what we're really talking about in today's current environment, where it's all about decentralization of assets, interoperability. In the book, I have 7 or so DAOs, smart contracts, decentralized applications, and so on. But the general gist of Web3 is co-ownership of assets and capabilities. So we have that foundational base as an evolutionary kind of environment for the internet. And upon that is now the metaverse, which is a UI that's more immersive, that's more 3D.
What's a UI?
User interface, kind of the way you interact with it. Sorry about.
Okay.
So quite
I'm
exciting.
sure I'm not alone.
It's and we're all we're all there with you. We're in this one together. It's new technology, quite exciting. So within the metaverse, I define it with about 7 characteristics. The first one is immersive 3D. Right now, you can go into the environment and you can have surround, very dimensional experiences. The next one is real time, and that is where things are happening as you engage with it on a very real-time basis. There's also ownership, which slightly overlaps, hints at the Web3 criteria. There's also interoperability, which is a major component of the metaverse, the ability to take digital or physical assets from these different metaverse worlds. There's shared experiences. How can you have these multiplayer game-like experiences together in real time?
Okay, so sorry to cut you in. So there's something my son does. He's all those games, all those, I don't know what to call them. I was going to say video games, and I realized they're not videos. But those games they play. And sometimes they're playing with people from different countries, and sometimes they don't even know each other, and they're playing the same game and all that. Does that have anything to do with what we're talking about?
Absolutely. I think gaming is probably the earliest indication of what the metaverse looks like, but also is taking influence from a number of core capabilities within the gaming environment. And that's one, right? This ability to connect with people in real time on a multiplayer aspect. And so the application of that in the business setting, right, is Zoom, and what we're on currently right now is kind of a metaphor for that going forward, is how can we connect digitally, but in our own physical spaces. And so I think that there's quite a lot of innovation in that space going forward. Maybe in the near future, we might be avatars in these kind of digital conferences. One person might be an avatar, one person might be in physical form, so on. So it's quite exciting, and it is advancing quite quickly.
Yeah, quite quickly. Okay, so what's the fourth one? You had said immersive 3D, real-time ownership.
Shared economy, and then persistent. So shared economy is, I think, one of my I'm most excited about this one, the shared economy, this ability to create a new monetization economy for not only businesses, but the users. So one example of that is, we were chatting earlier about NFTs, right? So non-fungible tokens.
I want to understand that one.
Which has had this, dramatic rise has become pervasive within the cultural conversation. Essentially, the first POC, proof of concept, of NFTs came about a few years ago, where it was centered around this notion that it was a digital art, right? And so it's greatly evolved from just being a digital piece of art to now almost a loyalty club, where you can create a digital asset that then can be used for what is called in the industry token gating. So with that NFT, you now are in a club, and you have different tiers within the club to give you different capabilities. Think of it like a frequent flyer mile club.
So how do I get my money?
So you can, as a user or a consumer, you could create an NFT. You could buy an NFT. You could resell the NFT. You could contribute to a community for co-ownership of an NFT, and so on. As a business owner, you could create an NFT for 50% off of your product, VIP access to early product releases, and so on. But I think the fundamental exciting part of NFTs is this ability for co-ownership, for the community to participate in the monetization and success of a project. So I think that's a whole new way of thinking about business going forward. Is it's not about monetizing consumers' time and attention, but it's about rewarding their time and attention and contributions to the community. So I'm quite excited about that aspect. Many are encapsulating that thought with, you might have heard this newer phrase called the creative economy, and that's essentially what they're talking about with the creative.
Tell us about that.
The creative economy is essentially this ability. We now have tools beyond our wildest belief to create like never before, And so we're seeing the rise of, like, over the last number of years, YouTube content creators, where in many cases they've surpassed traditional media outlets. And so now they create the content and they can monetize their content by doing sponsorships and advertising. And so that was an early indication of the creative economy, where we now have the tools at our fingertips to create like never before. And so that has the underlying capabilities of this shared economy type of thing.
Oh, wow. So this new book of yours on the metaverse, really decoding the metaverse, expand your business using Web3. What does it talk about?
Yeah, so it's essentially framed within 3 segments. The first one is decoding the platform, and that's where we talk about how did we get here. We kind of go through a historical timeline of the technology, and we kind of end that section on those core use cases of like smart contracts, DAOs, NFTs, DApps, DeFi, blockchain, and decentralization, the core characteristics of Web3. We then get into decoding what I call the experience, and that's the part 2 of the book, where we talk about the use cases you can do that are enabled by the metaverse. And those are like NFTs, gaming, entertainment, tokenomics that we touched on a little bit, 3D worlds, and digital fashion. So those are all economies in of themselves. And then we end up on the 3rd section of the book called Decoding the Imperatives. And that's all about these considerations well beyond table stakes of just security, privacy, and ethics, but we have to get even deeper into what I call the world of empowerment, this ability to create connections, unity, and community. And that ultimately, I think, is the North Star for the metaverse, to unite us and empower us with this ability to express ourselves.
Oh, wow. You said something about fashion being one of them. I think the first time I actually heard about metaverse had something to do with the fashion industry. Yeah,
it's a quite fascinating dynamic, and there does seem to be a little bit of a generational divide. But I think the bridge to get all generations to it is, throughout time, collectibles has always been a big thing, whether it be porcelain, figurines, whether it be, Star Wars figures. Yeah. Every generation has had collectibles. So if you think about digital fashion as a collectible, and you compound it with this ability and innate need to express ourselves, digital fashion is the next evolution of that. So now that we're spending more and more time within the digital world, how can we express our identity in different ways at different times in different scenarios? And digital fashion is kind of the first layer of that expression of how do we design our avatar, how do we dress it, how do we create shoes and so on. And I think the next evolution will be, can we not only have those digital assets be interoperable to move across these different worlds, much like we do when we jump from one website to the other, we'll now be able to jump from one metaverse world to the other.
My goodness.
The exciting part is, can we then extract those digital assets and bring them into the physical world? That will be a really, I think, interesting moment, almost inversing.
It's something, it really is something else. I'm going to take time out to read those books more and study. So while you were speaking, I was just thinking, okay, I'm a speaker, trainer, and a coach. I kind of have found the use of the AI apps for me in my area of business and things I can do with it. What role would metaverse play in my own line of work, for instance?
Definitely. Maybe I'll start with AI just because it's very concrete at the moment. I like to think of AI as a muse. Really, it's an assistant to inspire me, to give me different perspectives, and then I have the capability to decide and compose those different perspectives or points of inspiration. So then you kind of take that capability and you can even amplify it one step further when you go into the metaverse. My suggestion, and get asked this quite often by individuals, businesses, large and small, what is the starting point to get into the metaverse? I am of the current mindset, adopt some of the characteristics that are inherent of the metaverse, right? So co-ownership is a very quick thing to bring into any aspect of your current life or business. So co-ownership, I think, is really interesting. Any of those characteristics, I would say start off with that. How can you create a more immersive experience in your life or your business? How can you be more interoperable? And once you embed those, I think it's going to become a little more intuitive as we head into this next era called the metaverse.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. I'm sure everyone is listening the way that I am. And as you can see, I'm actually taking notes. Oh, wow. So you've told us which way likely the AI would go. What of with the metaverse?
I think it's still a little TBD. Many in the industry are calling it, we haven't had the iPhone moment yet. The iPhone moment was really that breakthrough for mobile.
Yeah.
We're still waiting for, technically it's called like the form factor. What form factor will be the tipping point for the escape velocity of the metaverse? Will it be AR glasses? Will it be contact lenses? Currently, we have VR headsets, which are starting to take off, but there's still, some questions on how much time you can wear the VR. So everyone's waiting for that tipping point within the metaverse. But currently, there's a number of fascinating places to go. I reference this quite often. During the pandemic, my daughter and I and my family, we were kind of in New York City, and very comfortable, safe, but it was a small apartment, and that was the metaverse, or aspects of the metaverse allowed us to connect with people outside. So my daughter would get in these multiplayer games with the kids that she hadn't seen for a number of weeks, and that allowed her social interaction. And so I think those are some very promising moments or examples of how the metaverse will continue to evolve and create this sense of community and connection going forward.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there any, I could go on and on and on. I have like a whole sheet with questions. So that's how come I know for sure that you're coming back. Before we round this edition up, is there anything you would like to add?
As excited as I am about the technology, I think the even more important thing to remember is be the future that you want the world to be. I think we are at a very exciting point in time where the technology is advancing so quickly. We all have the capability to help create the future together. So I'll just leave that with everyone. This is very new, we're just tipping our toe into this next world of possibilities. So I think we're all empowered to create a world of empowerment going forward.
Wow. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed this session, and I'm definitely going to appeal to you to come back at some other time.
Would love that. Thank you.
For you listeners, go get those 2 books, and we need to be up to date with what's going on. It's been a nice time with Chris, and till we meet again next week. I'm out.
You've been listening to Network Kingdom with Omo Obulor. Remember, if you cannot see where you're going, ask someone who has been there before.